once again for another Let's Drive. Thanks to the guys from Car Chase Heroes who helped provide me a drive in this 2005 movie premiere used 1969 Dodge Charger, generally made famous by the hit TV series The Dukes of Hazzard. Once again, I'm just going to talk about the car's history and that of its usage in TV and film, and how this iconic 60s muscle car compares to today, and how it remained relevant after all these decades since it first appeared in 1979 on our screens. Hope you guys enjoy. Cheers.
Here we are again, thanks to the guys from Car Chase Heroes. Allow me to take out this 1969 Dodge Charger, which was made famous in the 70s and 80s TV show The Dukes of Hazzard. Now, over the years, this car has made a number of appearances around. It's become a fan favorite among many people. And during the run of the show ran for 7 seasons. When the producers chose this car, they had gone through it over the 7-season period from 1979 to 1985. Around 320 Dodge Chargers were obtained. So the show basically started the 80s trope that you'd see in a lot of TV shows like Knight Rider, The Fall Guy, Hardcastle McCormack, where the stunts, you'd see a lot of jumping of the cars. And over the course of those 7 seasons, the show had its popularity, it had its fan base. I mean, people loved the characters, they loved Bo and Luke Duke, and a lot of young teenage boys fell in love with Daisy Duke, who made famous those shorts, played by Catherine Bach. In 1968, Dodge had decided to upgrade the then existing Charger, that the first generation basically had first come out in 1966. And what they decided to do is, with the second generation, they gave it a more Coke bottle look to it. Initially, the first generation, 1966, 1967 Dodge Charger, had a fastback, and it was still very appealing the way it looked. It had nice appeal to it, and it was turning a lot of heads, especially when racing. But it come the 1968 model, when they had incorporated that more sleek design to it, where this car basically had become a legend, where the second generation Dodge Charger had really made a name for itself. Now, a lot of it was helped to the appeal of the 1968 car chase classic Bullet with Steve McQueen. Now, in that movie where the producers had obtained a 1968 Dodge Charger to go up against the 1968 Mustang Fastback. The thing that was interesting about the second generation Chargers was that Dodge really wanted to go for that youth market, and they opted for a lot of different options with this car. The engines, for example, would vary, but the 440 Magnum was so popular, it had become that engine that almost so many people wanted, and especially when in car chases, it's almost always used because of that power. Now, these cars in the 60s more or less were the pinnacle of muscle. The second generation Chargers, which started from 1968 and ended in 1970, were more or less seen as the pinnacle of that 1960s muscle car era. Now, this car here has a 440 big block. The 440 Magnum was what was initially released also with this car. The 440 Magnum did about 375 horsepower. And for back then, that just made a monster of a car. It was in 1968 that this car made its mark in Hollywood. Now, come the 69 model, that was the main one used for the General Lee in the Dukes of Hazzard. Not much change had been made. There were some changes made to the grille and to the rear lights and to the side reflectors. But more or less, Dodge had come up with a winner. And as such, they left it as pretty much unchanged through that 3-year run of 1968 to 1970. Because the show required a lot of Dodge Chargers, the producers were scrambling to get what they could. So if they saw a Dodge Charger parked on the side of the road, if they were going from town to town or wherever the shooting was being done, they would literally stop and put a note and offer to buy those cars, any car they could find. One of the great aspects of the car in the show was its iconic horn. that horn that played Dixie. That came about by accident, apparently, when the producers were driving around and they came across, they heard someone who had that horn, and they stopped that gentleman and they basically offered him $300, which for back in the late 70s, that's a fair amount just for that horn. And that horn had become so iconic with that show. Now, come the late 70s, when Warner Brothers had decided to produce the Dukes of Hazzard, it was mostly due to the popularity of some of the shows and movies that came out at the time, mostly due to the popularity that was Smokey and the Bandit. So a lot of those southern-based moon runners, you know, alcohol runners, moonshiners, those were basically the basis of what the Dukes of Hazzard started. So one of the earliest inspirations for that, one of the bigger inspirations was also a 1975 movie called Moon Runners. Now, the TV show opted to go for a bit more of a light-hearted tone. They decided not to go for the heavy sort of like violence or anything like that. And the show was more or less this family-friendly event where the situations that would take place were mostly just for hijinks. So it revolved around the characters of Bo and Luke Duke and their cousin Daisy and their uncle Jesse. And you'd have, you know, some of the comedic roles for, like, you know, Boss Hogg and Cletus and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane. So unfortunately, over the years, especially recent years, this car has come under fire, and the biggest reason for that is due to its choice of the flag that they had opted back in the day, the producers opted back in the day to decorate the car with, given its southern theme. And because of such, this car is no longer that often, you won't often see it at car shows as much anymore, and it has caused a lot of controversy. Now, because I've heard both sides of the argument, and I've heard some, you know, I've heard some very, you know, strong arguments from both sides why the car should remain, why it shouldn't. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to say whether or not it's right or wrong. I will say though, here at MFP, we believe in trying to be as historically accurate in terms of our information, or even trying to find the cars that we represent on this channel, to try and keep it as historically accurate as possible, based on what the show was about when it was produced, based on why it was produced this way, and so forth. So again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to argue for or against. It's not about that. We're not about that here at MFP. But I will say, the show itself was one of positive, you know, it was about a family show. It was about positive. It didn't have any kind of negative stereotypes for Southern characters. Everyone in it was just, the show itself was about light-hearted fun. So there was no malice, there was no negativity towards it. Like, even the Duke boys, they were even shown not using like any kind of guns or any kind of weapons like that, apart from a bow and arrow with a stick of dynamite to it. So that's another situation, that's another topic altogether. But because of that, because of the light-hearted fun to it, over the years there have been a lot of people who have enjoyed it. There have been a lot of people who have fond memories of this car from all walks of life, who just look back and just remember this car as being just something that they enjoyed in their childhood. When you get behind the wheel of one of these cars, you've got to get in the mindset of letting go of what you know about driving. What you think you know about driving modern day cars, it's totally different with these ones. These have got a language of their own when it comes to driving. And because they lack power steering, this one in particular lacks power steering, you really got to slow down the corners and try and let motion do its thing. I can only imagine what the stunt drivers had to go through back in that era, back in the late 60s, like with Bullitt and even with the Dukes of Hazzard. I will say, like I always say, these are fun cars to drive. I always enjoy these old cars. But you do feel how much of a time capsule it is. You do feel how much this car is basically part of its time period. So, back in the mid-2000s, Warner Brothers had decided to make the TV show into a movie. In the 2005 movie starring Sean William Scott and Johnny Knoxville and Jessica Simpson. And for that, they had obtained about 26 of these cars. And most of those were pretty much destroyed, as was the situation with the show. Now in the show, only 17 remained. Only 17 of those cars survived. A lot of the times, they would use the smaller V8s for the jumps. Because the cars were so heavy, especially the front end, they would throw in the back like sandbags, concrete for ballast. So it wouldn't end up falling in the front and just trying to get it to land as flat as possible. But either way, because of its unibody design, the cars would often never survive. They'd be used for parts, for scrap. And like I said, in the course of those 7 seasons, 300 cars were destroyed. Only 17 survived. For the 2005 movie, this car in particular was used as promotion for the premiere. It was toured around the UK, and it is now known as one of the surviving cars from that time period. So one of the things you are noticing here now with me that wasn't on the show is basically these doors here being open. Now in the show, the doors were welded shut, which is one of the reasons why you often saw the characters jump in and out literally from the window. They'd be sliding across the hood of the car, they'd be jumping just straight through the open window. And that's one of the things here that's the different part of the car here that you're seeing now, is that with me now I've got the door open. You can see here that the interior does not match with the car from the TV show. That was more of a brown color, and this one here obviously, you got your black leather. So there's that difference there. But this car had been used as promotion in the premiere for the 2005 Johnny Knoxville, Sean William Scott and Jessica Simpson movie, the feature-length remake. Now that movie itself, it had a modest budget back in 2005 of $50 million. It didn't fare too well with the critics, and especially with the fans who had grown up with a different tone of the show. It was a much more light-hearted, family-friendly show, which the movie kind of didn't capture as well. And as such, the film only grossed about $111 million to its $50 million budget. Since then, a sequel had been made in around about 2007, which was just a straight-to-DVD, mostly forgotten movie. So since then, the car has remained very popular within fans, within a number of people over the world, especially like different parts of the world in Europe. The show and this car still remains very popular. And there are not that many cars that have lasted the test of time to that. You know, you got Kit from the Knight Rider series, and you got some other cars from the past. But from TV, like perhaps more so than any other TV car, this 1969 Charger has just kept on going over 40 years now. Just its popularity from when it first aired back in 1979. The show still remains, and there are a lot of people out there who have some positive memories about it. Like as kids, they remember the show, they remember coming home, they remember falling in love with the characters, doing more or less what they could. As the theme song goes, you know, making the only way they know how, you know, just the good old boys. And that was basically it. The show was just this fun TV show where it's something that you wouldn't necessarily see now. There wouldn't be that many people that would commit to literally doing this sort of situation where they'd basically jump and demolish all these cars, where now a lot of this would be done in CG. Even the 2005 movie, they used a lot of green screen. They did all they could to avoid. I mean, fair enough, they did still use 26 of these 69 and 68 Chargers for the movie. But it's just one of those situations where this car, it is still a car from a show that a lot of people remember fondly. And it was just something that was just so fun to watch that car, to watch the General Lee go flat out around those dirt road curves, to go jumping over those police cars, to go jumping over those ravines, to go jumping. And just, it was that fun to see. Like, it was that fun to have. The show had proven so popular that famed country and western singer Johnny Cash would go on to sing a song about it. Now, there are not that many cars in movies, be it or TV shows, that can lay claim that a famous legendary singer and someone wrote a song for a car and sung about it. So that's the one thing that this car has over a lot of other movie cars like Kit or Herbie the Love Bug and so forth. So having taken this car out today, I must say, although it's not exactly what I was expecting, because, you know, it's not as, obviously for obvious reasons, it's not as light and nimble as the Factory 5 Shelby replica that I drove, or even the GT500 replica. This car here, this Dukes of Hazzard 1969 Dodge Charger, I will say it still does have an appeal to get behind it, but you've got to put your mindset of the 1960s when this car was built. Like, I mean, this car itself doesn't have power steering, so don't expect anything special going on for it. I mean, it's probably only got like the front disc brakes, the rear is still drum, which was basically how they were produced. And although it's got its 440 big block V8 engine, and it is still a powerhouse, you've got to know that this car, because of its weight, you've got to get into a different mindset if you're going to get behind the wheel of it. You can't really think of it too much of like, okay, it's easy to get behind the wheel and just drive it like you normally would any other car. You really got to focus on this car when you're driving. And I like the fact that this car, over so many years, has still remained popular with a lot of the people that grew up watching the show back in that era. You just got to understand that this show was popular for a reason. And this show was something that a lot of young people at the time just fell in love with. And especially the car, given how it was so popular to the fact that it received more fan mail than the actual stars of the show. But having said that, taking this car out today, I do say, you know, I recommend it, but just take it out with a bit of like, you know, like, take it with a grain of salt. Don't try and get in and expect you're going to be ripping down the street, you're going to be doing some crazy stuff like the Dukes of Hazzard boys did. But just take it for what it is. Take it for that being part of that peak of that 1960s muscle car era in the States, in America. And just admire the car for what it is. You know? So having said that, I enjoyed it very much. I do recommend it. I was glad I was able to take this car out today. And if you could do the same, please, I recommend it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video today. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. And yeah, hope to see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.
Special shout out to Tom and Car Chase Heroes for the chance I got to drive this tribute car and to film myself doing so. If you would like to have a similar driving experience as the other film and TV based cars to choose from, along with other racing and sports vehicles on offer, please visit Car Chase Heroes at the link in the description below to arrange for a driving session of your own, as they offer a number of different experiences in different locations across the UK. Thank you for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe and to hit the notification bell icon, as your support is what helps this channel grow and to bring you more content such as this one.